Hello, and welcome to Travel Stories Unpacked, where we are going to share all our travel stories from the silly to the serious and everywhere in between. I am your host, Ashley Newton, and thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode, where we are going to debate the benefits of Airbnbs and hotels. And I want to welcome to the show our guest for today, who is, I would say, like an Airbnb advocate. Definitely a fan.
I'd say so.
So thank you, Julia, for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I needed somebody who has more experience with Airbnbs and really who is more of a fan of them than I am to really give this justice.
Yeah.
But I was creeping your Instagram when my producer was like, I have the perfect person for this topic. And if you want to go over to her Instagram and check it out, it is at Away with Julia. No spaces, no caps, nice and simple. How did you steal that, by the way?
Honestly, I had another one before. It was Julia.travels, and that dot drove me insane.
Fair enough.
And then I was kind of thinking of like a play on words. What could I do? And I liked the Away with Julia because it was like a way to do things. And so like to talk a little bit more about just than travel.
Oh, yeah.
Like a way to do this or a way to do that. So
I
don't know. It was there and I was like, I'm stealing this immediately before I have to add like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 at the end.
I'm really curious. How did you get started documenting your travel adventures?
Yeah, so it started back in like 2016. I'm still in the nursing field now. I'm a nurse practitioner, but back then I was living in Cleveland and really wanted to get into travel nursing. And so basically with that, you can do it one of two ways. You can travel for assignments or you could do what I did, which was stayed in Ohio. But you can kind of make your own schedule and be off for chunks of time. And I was like, this is when travel started to get huge on Instagram. Like you really started to see influencers. And I got on that bandwagon and just started to create content. I took photography back in high school.
Okay.
And I've always been interested in like, I have a professional camera and I was like, I'm just going to start documenting this stuff and kind of see where it goes. I feel like I didn't really start taking it seriously until the last couple of years. But have just always really enjoyed documenting it and have always really enjoyed travel since about 2016.
When you started documenting your journeys and traveling more, did you immediately gravitate towards Airbnbs, or was it, like living and learning that made you start to favor them?
Yeah, I honestly think I didn't feel any certain way until I started to go on like big costly trips. So like the first time that I realized, Airbnb may have some advantages was the first time I went to Hawaii. Okay. So Hawaii's expensive. And I remember we stayed in like our first big name hotel and it was pricey. Like for us, I think it was upwards of like $600 a night. It was the most expensive place we had stayed.
When you say us, what's your group that you're traveling with?
So I'll either go with my significant other, his name's Matt, or I've done like group trips. My sister really likes to travel. So her and her husband. And then I've taken a few trips with like a group of friends.
Okay, and in Hawaii you were with?
Just me and my significant other.
Oh, that sounds nice.
Yeah, it was nice. And this was like one of our first trips. I had been to Hawaii before and he hadn't. And it's just like one of those dream spots.
Oh, yeah.
That you feel like I'll never get there. And then we've actually been like 4 times now. But
incredible.
It was beautiful. And we stayed at a broad range. We stayed at a hostel. We stayed at a big name hotel. And then we stayed in an Airbnb. And I think it was that experience because we were able to save so much money, just specifically in Hawaii, by booking with an Airbnb and the hostel over a hotel. And a big reason was like cost of food. Like we were able to like cook our own food in the Airbnb. Gotcha. And just keep the prices down, especially when we went with my sister a couple years later. We went as a group. And so we're splitting that price of like a 2-bedroom Airbnb over the one kind of room hotel. So I think that's when it hit me like, okay, there can be advantages to both and they both have their pros and cons. And that's when I started to dig more into it.
Yeah, so I have only ever really liked an Airbnb for those 2 reasons that you said there. One, the cooking.
Yeah.
And now granted, that's really dependent on, for me specifically, like what destination I'm going to and what the trip is as a whole. Because I love not cooking. Yeah. And I love going to restaurants and I love being sort of into like that city atmosphere.
Yeah.
But if you are doing something where it's a longer trip, it's not very cost effective to do that morning, noon, and night. Yes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then with the big group, I think that to me is the biggest appeal of an Airbnb is if you're traveling with a larger group or even just another couple or something like that, then I could really see how it's like, this is just going to be better for us.
Yeah, I think you like hit the nail on the head. A big group is like, you can get the price down so far. We went on a big group trip in Iceland. Iceland's another super expensive place. And we stayed, like, it felt dirt cheap because we were in a group of 10 and we would find these big villa homes. And by the time you really broke down the Airbnb or VRBO pricing, it was like $50 a night for a couple is what it felt like. And then, yeah, the cooking. So I have friends that are like, I never want to cook on vacation. That's not a vacation, which is true. But when you're at a place for like a week, it isn't cost effective to constantly go out, or just like the nights where, I don't know, you're out like at the beach all day, you were snorkeling, you got so much sun, you don't want to like get ready to go out to dinner. You just like want to cook something quickly and get into bed. I feel it can be super beneficial. And I'm always someone too, the one thing I've learned about the kitchen thing specifically that I think has added to a place is I love going to farmers markets. And there's no purpose of me doing that if I don't have a kitchen to bring things back to. But if I can like go kind of shop at the farmers markets, I feel like I'm doing something local. It's just like a fun little thing to do that's really purposeful when I have a place to cook whatever I bought locally. So that's another kind of fun thing that I think it can add.
Now I have so many questions.
Yeah.
Because, like, first of all, I love the idea of going to a farmer's market when you're in a new place.
Yeah.
That seems like such a fun, creative way to try a bunch of different, it's like a little sample of the local cuisines and culture. So I think that's really cool. How do you find those?
Honestly, so sometimes the Airbnb hosts will post like the good ones. I think the ones that go the extra mile, they'll post like fun happenings that happen.
Do they call it fun happenings, or
maybe
is that your
fun happenings? That's my little way of, it's a fun happening. They'll post that like in their account sort of, or like the description of the place. But most times I'll just look it up, especially now that I've been doing it, like, hey, does this town do farmers markets, or like what to do in this town? And I've purposely stayed at places before, like if we know we're going to split it. Like when we went to Maine, we went to Acadia National Park. We knew we were going to do some days in an Airbnb with a kitchen and then a couple days in a hotel without. Yeah. And I read that on Thursdays, they did this really beautiful farmer's market. And I was like, okay, well, let's make sure we do the Airbnb on that Thursday so I can like take advantage of that. But really just looking up what is happening in the city on certain days. And specifically, if you are someone that likes to cook, looking into farmers markets or special events that are happening. Yeah.
You know, I have to mention, because my uncle lives in Maine and he lives in a really cool sort of area. It's Bar Harbor. So
yes, that's where we were.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and he was telling me he's a little annoyed because he's like, all my neighbors are gone and I live in Airbnbs, like everybody on the street. So like you lose a little bit of that sense of community, I think, in a lot of these towns where that happens. And that's exactly what I think you kind of want, is to feel like you are living like a local, but then you realize nobody around you is a local. So I think that's an interesting sort of catch that you might not be aware of if you're booking a vacation rental.
Yeah. And I'll be honest with you, like you do see a difference in Airbnb. I mean, I've seen a difference in Airbnbs who are owned by a local and Airbnbs that are owned by like
a
companies that go buy properties.
Yeah.
The difference is insane, especially like when something goes wrong or you need help or something, or how much they offer you for here's things to do in town. And I've always had a better experience when it's someone who's a local who sometimes lives there when they're not renting it out, or like who lives down the street or still is in town. I always get a better experience when it's someone who is a local, but I do know that that's something that does irritate local people who have, you know, when you live somewhere like Bar Harbor and it's super popular, all these Airbnbs are popping up and it's like, wait, where's my actual neighbors instead of these people coming and going?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think another interesting thing that you're mentioning is like, how do you tell? Like, are there red flags that you can look for when you're looking at a posting to know if it's from a real person or one of these larger conglomerates?
There's a couple that are obvious. Their picture is like their brand picture.
Okay, so tip number one.
Yeah, look at the picture. Is it a human or is it like their branding? And then a lot of times the description will say, I'm a local. I grew up in Bar Harbor or whatever, and this is where I live. A lot of them, I think, like to tell you if they're close, because I think it gives you this sense of comfort. If something goes wrong, someone is nearby. Whereas like when it's a corporation that's listed under their name, often it's not like, you know, Ethan and Jen own this Airbnb. It's like the Casa owns this Airbnb. And those are honestly, I've not had many bad experiences, but the only ones that I have had were not owned by like a local or someone that knew the area and was nearby if I needed them.
Do you have any bad experiences that you want to share that you think people can learn from?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I have really just one that was like, this is a bad experience, where I had to reach out to Airbnb support, which I hate that I had to do that, but
Yeah.
I mean, that was the case. And it was the situation where this was owned by, so it was actually like a hotel condo like complex, and then you can own.
And where were you staying?
This was in Miami.
Okay.
Yeah. So we were on a group trip, me, my significant other, and then another couple that we were with. And we were staying like 4 or 5 days in this condo complex that you could own. And of course, a property manager was just like running it from who knows where.
Mm-hmm.
And we got in, and the air conditioning vent that's like over our friend's room, their doorway, was leaking. When I say leaking, it's like a slip hazard on the tile.
Oh, goodness.
My friend's stuff got wet. Like it was not ideal. And it's just constant.
I mean, that's
dripping.
a safety issue.
It was not good.
Yeah.
So we tried to reach out to the host, who was just completely unresponsive. So finally we went down, because again, it's kind of like a condo complex. There's someone working the front desk. So we went down, and they were like, well, we can't help you because you're not really like a guest of the hotel condo.
Ooh.
You're yes. And this is where my one thing when it comes to booking Airbnbs, this is probably like one of my bigger caveats, is like stay away from ones that are within a apartment condo complex or a hotel. There's probably outliers that are good, but for me, I feel like they know which ones are being rented out by people, and you're not really treated like you would be if you lived in that apartment.
Kind of going back to the neighborhood conversation. It's like these people have neighbors, and you're just,
I'm just
coming
kind of
and
like
going.
a visitor. Yes. So they brought a bucket up, like a mop bucket. It filled within an hour, and they're like, oh, just you go out and enjoy your time in Miami. We'll just like come keep bringing buckets. I'm like, well, no, because I don't want you just coming in here with all of our stuff and just bringing buckets every couple of hours. So I finally had to get in touch with Airbnb support, who was amazing. They offered to find us another Airbnb and pay for it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we finally got a hold. They were like, let us try to get a hold of the owner first. So they finally, surprise, surprise, were able to get a hold of him. We got like a huge discount. I think we got like 1 or 2 nights for free. They found a separate company outside of the apartment complex to come in and like fix it. It was super annoying, and I don't think I should have had to reach out to Airbnb support. But again, I think that's what happens. The guy told me like, sorry, I'm in like Japan on business. Well, okay, so I was never going to reach you. But that's probably my worst experience. And again, I think it's just because you don't have someone who, I don't want to say that they don't care, but they're just sort of turning and burning a little bit of these properties. And they're just not local to help if things go wrong.
I think that is one of the reasons that I've not like favored hotels, but totally favored hotels. And it's because you know that you have that sort of security within it. Like there is a staff, there's people on site all the time. And then if for some reason that's not working, there's a million different numbers and support. Like there's tried and true lines and place that you can take when you're not satisfied. And honestly, that doesn't usually happen, but it's more knowing that I'd know what to do. Yeah. That I'd know how to handle it.
Absolutely.
And I also think that one of the things that I like about hotels is the cost. And I'm really curious about how because you mentioned that you found a value when you were booking with Airbnb versus some of your other offerings. But I've been doing research lately for a trip just to like Traverse City, Michigan. Yeah. I've never been there. It looks really awesome. It's beautiful. So, you've been there? Yeah. Okay, maybe we'll have to chat later and you can give me like tips. But I was looking and there's like a very specific area that I want to be in, which is where all the booze is. I want to be by the breweries and the wineries, which are a little farther out. But anyway, I was looking and I couldn't find any Airbnbs that were even near there. And the ones that was a condo. So I'm really glad that we had this discussion. But then on top of that, I was looking at the pricing and I was like, this is insane. And I don't need anything fancy. Yeah. I'm not going for Instagram worthy. I want a bed. I want it to be clean and I want to feel safe where I am. Yep. And like then when I was doing the price compare and then I feel like with Airbnb too, there's some hidden charges that you don't necessarily see until you're like halfway through the process. So, and again, I do want to emphasize this was for two people, just me and my boyfriend. So if it
Okay.
was a larger group, you could maybe justify it. But when you're looking, for traveling with you and your boyfriend, do you find this problem, or are you just like better at Airbnb than me?
I think so. The one thing you do want to do is at the top, they added this only, I'm just taking a guess, maybe 2 years ago, but there's now a slide button on the top that says show the price per night with taxes and
I
fees.
did see
so
that.
Like at minimum, search that way, because you'll find a place you fall in love with, and then you go to hit book and you're like, wait a second, we just tripled in price. What's going on? And then there are some places that in their title, because these owners set their own cleaning fees, and then there's always an Airbnb fee, but they set the other charges. And so there are some that will say like no cleaning fee, no pet fee or whatever. And there's some that I've stayed at that charge $0 for cleaning. So looking for things like that in the title, I'd say those are few and far between. But I think you're right. Like there's a place, even in my life as someone that usually chooses Airbnb, there's a place for hotels in your life. And I think there's a place for Airbnbs. And I think it really depends, like, what are you trying to get out of the trip? What are you there for? What are you doing? How much time are you going to be spending in a hotel versus an Airbnb? But you're right. Those fees they can be exuberant. And I think I always look out for, okay, if I'm paying a big cleaning fee, for example, they'll write in the house rules section what you're going to be expected to do when you check out.
Yeah.
So if my cleaning fee is $150 for the time I'm there, and you're making me strip the sheets, start the load of whites, do all the dishes. There was one that I stayed at once, and it was like the garbage truck came on Mondays and then recycling Thursdays. We checked in on a Monday morning, so we had no trash there, but we were expected to take the trash cans out from the people who had stayed from the Tuesday to Sunday prior. And I'm just like, why am I it's not a huge deal, but at the same time, it was one of those things when the cleaning fee is so big. Now, if the cleaning fee is big and all you want me to do is like leave the towels on the floor, which I think is just like habitual for me anyways, they're in the tub or the floor, fine. But if you're charging me a huge cleaning fee and your list is yay long, it definitely turns me off. And I think a lot of Airbnb owners, when that became such a big topic of conversation in the last couple of years, scaled back their cleaning fees. And like I said, some will say there's no cleaning fee at all, which is helpful. Still frustrating that you have to do a couple things, but I think everyone has a limit on here's what I'm willing to do on vacation, here's what I'm not willing to do.
Well, and like when you mentioned the house rules, I think that's sort of where I get like hung up, because it's like, oh, here's your homework. And I'm just like, I'm trying to enjoy my time there. And you're right. Sometimes they are like very like particular about it. And the last one I was at was actually this beautiful property in Texas. And it was absolutely perfect it was a bachelorette. And it was perfect for the group size. Like, and it made total sense, right? But as the maid of honor, guess who's the one cleaning up after everybody?
You're the one walking around. If you booked it, you're like, okay, this is my
I didn't
credit
even
card.
book it. That's the thing. So I was like, I am just sort of guessing because I didn't have direct access to the app, and they only had so much printed. So then I'm like, and we decorated, which maybe we shouldn't, but then I'm like, okay, got to make sure every single streamer is taken care of, and all the trash is the same thing all the way to the curb. And then we ran out of like space in the trash bins. So now I'm like, are we going to get charged because the lids aren't perfectly on? And it was just like, I was very stressed.
It's too much stress.
Trying to make sure that everything was right and like you said, starting laundry. What?
No.
Like, I don't want to sound like so privileged and entitled that I couldn't possibly be bothered with laundry, but it's like, you just don't have to deal with that at a hotel.
No, it's just something you don't want to have to do. I will say there are just some things for me, especially in like Nashville's a big one, where I'm going with my significant other to a place, but they're so used to these bachelorette parties probably destroying their home, because that can happen.
Yeah.
And so they have all these rules, and I'm like, I'm not going to be doing any of this here. Like, but it makes me so, I'm like this the whole time, because I'm like, oh my God, if like one little thing happens, like I have my glass of wine and I spill a little, like, I'm freaking out the whole time. And I don't want to have to be doing that. So I agree. I think that you can I think you can almost tell when you're reading the description and reading the house rules, like, who is that neurotic owner that you really don't want to be in business with, because it is a transaction, versus people who you feel like, okay, like this is just a normal, be a good person, take care of the property the way you would any property, and then we'll be okay. So I do stay away from ones that I feel like are just, it's too much too many house rules.
Yeah. And another thing that you mentioned earlier is you like knowing that the like owner's sort of nearby. I hate that.
Really?
I feel like Big Brother's watching me and I don't like it.
Is it just meeting
like,
them or like knowing they're
any
nearby?
of it? I don't want any of that.
Okay.
Like I don't want them to be like in the house nearby. I don't want them to be like, well, yeah, come on down and we'll have a fire together. Like, no, I'm sorry. Like, I'm not a very social person. So that just feels like very stressful and forced.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like that element really freaks me out. I do like that you could be like, I want the whole house though. So you don't end up accidentally like in a room or something.
Oh, I would never do that.
Yeah.
My boyfriend actually, one of my first Airbnb experiences ever, I let him take control of the trip. Never do that again. So he booked us a room in this woman's apartment. He's like, I got us an Airbnb. And I was like, okay, cool. It was in LA. It was overlooking Manhattan Beach.
Oh, LA. Okay.
Yeah. It was overlooking Manhattan Beach. It was gorgeous. This thing looked like Restoration Hardware threw up in it. It was gorgeous. And I was like, wow, he's really doing it big. And we knock on the door and a woman answers. I was like, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing? And she was really nice, but I was like, no.
And you didn't know until you showed up.
No, I didn't know. And so I'm like, what's happening here? And he's like, well, you can book like rooms. I was like, no, I know that it's an option, but why was that the option that you went with? And again, so nice. She stayed out of our way, but like there was a morning where we were like making breakfast in there because that was another thing he really likes to cook. And she came out and I was just like, I hate everything about this, actually. I was ready to book another place. Thankfully, we were just there for 2 nights. But yeah, the room sharing,
not for me.
I don't do it. It's not for me. But the being in town, mainly I like it because I trust their suggestions on things. I feel like, okay, this is like a local, where's the bar you like to go to? Or where's I don't know, like the activities you like to do.
Yeah,
Where's the
did you know that you
spots?
can ask your hotel concierge that?
You
though?
can,
because they know and they're very helpful.
You can.
You can also like drop off your bags early if like and like Airbnbs just like aren't gonna accommodate you like that. But like when I was in Chicago, like we got there early. We wanted to see the city. They were happy to like hold our bags for us before we checked in. We got breakfast. Free breakfast. So if you're worried about like needing a kitchen, maybe you just need breakfast.
You just need breakfast. Yeah.
just think about it. That's all I'm saying. Like
there's definitely there's because I've had Airbnbs ask like, do you want to store your bags? I'm like, not really. For some reason I'll trust a hotel to do that, but like I don't trust the Airbnb.
Accountability. I get it.
Don't.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. Like early check-in, which I do always ask every Airbnb host for. I flat out will say it. Can I check in early? And some will let you. I will say can I share like my best Airbnb experience? Like the reason why I feel like Airbnbs.
I would love to hear it.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So this is the one thing, because when you brought up concierge, so you're right. Like hotels have great concierge services and they can give you a list of things to do. But I feel like the one thing that you might not find is something like we went to Greece. We stayed in the island was Milos, which like has not been blown up yet. It probably is now, but back
I feel like it's actually really
in
popular.
2019. In 2019, it was still like gathering some.
You're a trendsetter.
Yeah, as I find it on Instagram. But we stayed in this very small town. By town, I mean there was 4 fishermen homes built into the rock and a church that was probably like 250 square feet. That was the town.
My sisterhood of the traveling pants.
That's what it was. It literally was Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants. So we get down there, the host showed us around, she made us cookies, she like had this fruit bowl of this like fresh fruit that she picked, even put grapes in the freezer so you could have like frozen grapes on a super hot day. This place was amazing. Her grandfather built it back in like the 1800s.
Amazing.
It was this whole, you literally open this like garage door on the bottom layer and you take a step out and your feet are in the sand and then you're in the ocean. It was wild. And so she's like, I hope you don't mind. This church is, next door. One of the like Yaya's cousin is getting married tonight and I hope it doesn't like bother you. I'm like, no, we're usually up late. It's fine. And so we didn't want to go back into the town. Driving was super stressful on that island. You're like in alleyways this big.
Were you driving?
I was driving.
Did you rent a car?
Yes.
Girl, you are so brave.
Yes.
There's so much of this that I just like could not do.
No, I've drove in so many different countries, including on the opposite side of the road.
Yeah.
It's wild.
What is it in Greece?
This
is so ignorant of me, but I have no idea.
No, now I can't even remember. I think it's the same side. I think it's our side of the road.
Okay.
Yeah.
But smaller roads in general than what we're used to.
I mean, I was like this with walls on each side. I'm like, this is not okay. So I didn't really want to go back into the walled city. So I'm like, she was like, just go over to this wedding if you want. And normally I'm like you, I'm not like a social butterfly, but I do enjoy these very kind of like hidden gems of experiences.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so I'm like, all right, let's just go check it out. No one spoke English. There's like 25 people there. No one speaks any English.
Did you speak Greek?
No, absolutely
Greek,
not.
right?
Absolutely
I was
not.
like, if I look stupid twice.
No, absolutely not. I didn't speak anything, but there's people dancing and there's music, there's kids, there's family. And we were just eating like lamb kebabs and having wine. And we were just a part of this experience that, like, even though we couldn't talk to anyone, we were dancing and just enjoying
like you'll
this
never
thing.
forget that.
Like, I'll never forget that. And that was a part of our trip to Greece. And so for me, as much as like concierge services have been amazing at hotels I've traveled to, I do feel a little bit like, well, it's the same list of things that everyone staying at this hotel is going to get. Whereas at an Airbnb, you may get this unique experience, especially if you stay at super unique Airbnbs that you just won't get unless you stay there.
Right.
And so I do think it really, at the end of the day, even though I obviously have a favorite, they all do play their part. And depending on where you're staying and what you want your travel vibe to be.
And I still have so many thoughts, but we've been talking for so long. But I have to just applaud you, I think, on doing this internationally. Because, like, that is the biggest thing that I think I have a fear level with. Whereas if I'm booking a hotel or even, like, I don't know, just something I feel like is a company. I feel like by the time I travel all the way there, it's going to be there. And that's probably just my, like, nervous level, my anxiety level. But I have really enjoyed talking about this with you. And I do feel like I'm not a convert yet or anything like that, but maybe I will start considering it a little bit more and just like checking them out. And gosh, I feel like I have so many more follow-up questions. So maybe we can talk about this again sometime or dive into it further, because I really do want to know a little bit more about the international aspects and, you know, some maybe of these amazing properties or things you've been to. But I think for today we're gonna wrap it on up. Okay. So did you have fun? Did you like talking about this?
Yes, I love talking about this stuff. So, and it's obviously my goal to convert you a little bit. So we'll have to chat.
You did a really valiant effort. Okay, I'll say
perfect.
That. But my comfort line is definitely a little bit more, I think, on the hotel side. I get my points. I get my comfort. I feel good there. But anytime I've stayed at an Airbnb, it has been a good experience. Good. So it's not like I had I'm 100% against it or anything like that. In the end, I just want to go places and have a good time.
That's it. That's what we're all trying to do.
Yeah. All right. So we'd love to hear your opinions too, though. So please let us know in the comments, what team are you on? Are you team Airbnb or are you team hotel or are you something else entirely? We want to know. And share your thoughts on social media too, using the hashtag Travel Stories Unpacked. And don't forget to check out Julia's Instagram. We'll say that one more time. It's Away with Julia. And thank you again so much. And thank you everybody for listening. This podcast is brought to you by KHM Travel Group, which is a leading host agency for independent travel agents. So you can learn more about that at khmtravel.com. And don't forget to come back next week for more Travel Stories Unpacked.